0634, June 7th, 1944. A hedgerow-lined lane outside Vierville-sur-Mer, Normandy, less than 6 miles from Omaha Beach. The air still smells of wet earth, cordite, and burning diesel. A low ceiling of cloud hangs over the fields. Visibility comes in bursts, through gaps in apple trees, through breaks in thick green walls of brush and dirt. Private First Class Daniel, or Dan Mercer, 22, rifleman, Company E, 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, keeps his left hand locked around the forend of an M1 Garand. The rifle weighs about 9.5 pounds loaded. It's chambered in .30-06 Springfield. It holds 8 rounds in an N-block clip. Dan has fired it on qualification ranges back in England until his shoulder bruised. He trusts it. The Garand feeds, it cycles, it hits hard. At 0634, the platoon moves in a staggered file along the lane. The lieutenant wants to push inland, find the next road junction, and keep pressure on German positions that survived the naval bombardment. The map shows open fields. In reality, Normandy is chopped into compartments, hedgerows built up over centuries, earthen banks often 3 to 5 feet high, topped with roots and brush that rise another 3 to 6 feet. Each field is a concealed fighting position. Each gap is a firing lane. At 0639, Dan hears the sound that doesn't match the rifles around him. It is not a single crack. It is not the deeper, slower hammering of a Browning automatic rifle. It is a ripping, tearing noise, like cloth being pulled apart at high speed. BRRRRT, BRRRRT, BRRRRT. The lane erupts. Dirt spits from the bank at chest height. Leaves explode into fragments. A man 2 positions ahead falls without a shout, his helmet flipping off into the grass. At 0640, Dan's first thought is simple. That's more than one gun. It sounds like an entire line of machine guns firing at once. He can't see the source. The sound comes from somewhere beyond the hedgerow, maybe 150 to 250 yards away, and it doesn't stop long enough for the platoon to run. It fires in bursts, short, brutal strings, and then pauses just long enough to bait movement. This is his first close exposure to the MG42, Germany's general-issue machine gun designed to dominate open ground. It fires the 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge. The weapon itself is roughly 25 pounds, light enough for a crew to carry fast. With its bipod, it can be set low behind cover. With its tripod, it can be locked into sustained fire rolls. Its rate of fire is so high, often well over 1,000 rounds per minute, that the bursts blur into that signature ripping sound. At 0641, the platoon goes flat. No one stands. No one talks. The men press into mud and crushed vegetation, rifles pinned under their bodies. Dan can feel the Garand's steel receiver cold against his forearm. The rifle still works. The rifle is still lethal. But the lane is a funnel, and the gun beyond the hedge is not trying to trade shots. It is trying to freeze the platoon in place. At 0643, the lieutenant crawls forward and signals for smoke. A man behind Dan fumbles for a grenade. His hands shake. The MG42 fires again, 2 bursts, fast, disciplined. The rounds don't just kill, they deny movement. They erase the space between cover. Dan watches a gap in the hedgerow, a black slit between roots. He considers firing, but firing at what? The gun is hidden. The enemy crew has time, cover, and a belt-fed weapon built for this exact kind of control. At 0645, Dan understands the problem. The American rifleman is trained to win with aimed shots and individual initiative. The MG42 is built to make initiative impossible. The ripping bursts keep the platoon flat in the lane. At 0646, the lieutenant tries to build a plan from hand signals and eye contact. He points 2 men toward a shallow ditch on the left. He points the BRRRT team toward the right bank. He wants suppressive fire and a flank. He wants movement. The MG42 is already managing that decision. At 0647, Dan slides his Garand forward an inch at a time. The rifle's front sight post is steady. He can put rounds through a window at 200 yards on the range. Here, the target is a hedgerow that looks alive. Every time he lifts his head, the gun fires again, and the hedge kicks dirt into his face. The MG42 isn't just fast, it's efficient. A 2- or 3-man team, gunner, assistant gunner, ammunition bearer, can keep it fed. Belts come in 50-round segments that can be linked. The barrel is designed to be changed quickly. The gun's high cyclic rate heats steel fast, but German crews train to swap barrels under pressure using a side-mounted latch and asbestos mitts. The weapon's design assumes sustained fighting. It assumes the gun will fire enough to matter. At 0647, Dan slides his Garand forward an inch at a time. The rifle's front sight post is steady. He can put rounds through a window at 200 yards on the range. Here, the target is a hedgerow that looks alive. Every time he lifts his head, the gun fires again, and the hedge kicks dirt into his face. The MG42 isn't just fast, it's efficient. A 2- or 3-man team, gunner, assistant gunner, ammunition bearer, can keep it fed. Belts come in 50-round segments that can be linked. The barrel is designed to be changed quickly. The gun's high cyclic rate heats steel fast, but German crews train to swap barrels under pressure using a side-mounted latch and asbestos mitts. The weapon's design assumes sustained fighting. It assumes the gun will fire enough to matter. At 0650, the lieutenant commits to a flank through a gap in the hedge behind them. 2 men with wire cutters start widening an opening. It's slow. Roots resist. Branches snag sleeves. The MG42 pauses, then fires again, as if it can sense the preparation. It isn't magic, it's pattern recognition. A good machine gun crew learns the rhythm of men under fire. At 0606, the platoon's radio, an SCR 300 backpack set, heavy and awkward, finally gets through to company headquarters. The message is short. Pinned by machine gun, grid reference approximate, need indirect fire or armor. In this part of Normandy, armor doesn't appear on demand. Tanks struggle with the same hedgerows. Infantry and armor are still learning how to fight in this terrain together. At 0712, the lieutenant tries smoke again. A grenade arcs over the hedge. It pops with a white cloud that starts thin, then thickens. For a moment, the MG42 stops. Then it fires into the smoke anyway, bursting the cloud with invisible force. This is the psychological power of the weapon. Even when the gunner can't see, the sound alone suggests certainty. It suggests control. At 0715, Dan hears a second MG42 open up, off to the right, farther away, maybe 400 yards. The platoon stiffens. The lane now feels like a trap under intersecting fire. But the truth is simpler and worse. One MG42 can sound like many. 2 can sound like a company's worth of guns. At 0718, the lieutenant makes the call. He points to the left flank element. He points to Dan. He draws a line in the air with 2 fingers, forward, then left. A hedge breach. A rush into the adjacent field. A short sprint, maybe 30 yards to the next bank. It's a basic infantry problem. Cross open ground under machine gun fire and live long enough to close. Dan checks his rifle. He thumbs the op rod. He feels the spring tension. He has 6 rounds left in the clip. He doesn't want to hear the ping of an empty clip at the wrong moment, but that sound is less important than keeping the rifle loaded. He pulls a spare clip from his bandolier, metal cold against his fingers. At 0721, the smoke thickens. The lieutenant raises his hand. At 0722, he drops it.
Dan runs. 0722. Dan runs through smoke and into the next field at 722. The world shrinks to a few yards of gray. His boots hit uneven ground. The Garand is tight to his chest. He counts steps without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, trying to reach the next earthen bank before the gun reacquires him. 0723. The MG42 finds the rhythm again. The ripping sound cuts through the smoke like a saw. Rounds snap overhead. Others hit low, thudding into the soil and throwing up clods. The gunner is not aiming at Dan as a person. He is aiming at the root. He is putting fire where men must cross. A man to Dan's right stumbles and collapses. No scream, just a hard drop, as if the body has been switched off. Dan keeps moving. Stopping is worse. 0724. He reaches the far bank and throws himself behind it. His shoulder slams into dirt. He rolls onto his side, breath sharp, chest tight. The field is only 35 to 50 yards across, but it might as well be a river. He looks back. Shapes are still crossing. Some make it, some don't. The MG42 fires 2 short bursts and pauses. The pause is deliberate. It invites movement. Then it punishes it. 0726. Dan crawls up the bank just enough to see. The smoke is thinning. He can now pick out the far hedge line where the gun is firing from. The flashes are low. The position is dug in, likely sandbagged or reinforced with cut sod. A smart crew. They're controlling a lane and forcing the Americans to attack at a disadvantage. 0728. The lieutenant arrives behind the bank, panting, face streaked with dirt. He grabs the platoon sergeant and points again, this time closer. He wants grenades into the gun pit. He wants the flank element to crawl along the hedgerow until they're inside throwing distance. In Normandy's hedgerow country, distances are deceptive. A position that looks close can take 10 minutes of crawling. A machine gun that sounds omnipresent might be only 2 men and a pile of belts. 0731. Dan loads a fresh clip. The en-bloc seats with a metallic click. He keeps his thumb clear of the bolt's bite. He is trained for this. He can do it half-blind. The rifle is still reliable. It is still accurate. But accuracy is only useful when you are allowed to use it. 0734. The flank team starts moving along the base of the hedge. They go single file, low, using roots and folds in the bank for cover. Dan watches them disappear into thicker brush. He waits for the MG42 to swing and catch them. It doesn't. Not yet. The gun is focused on the most obvious avenue, the field and the bank. The crew is confident. Confidence creates habits. 0738. The platoon's 60mm mortar section, 2 men with a tube, base plate, and bipod, plus ammunition, gets into position behind the original hedgerow. The mortar is not heavy by artillery standards, but in this terrain it is a burden. The men work fast anyway. One sets the base plate, one aligns the tube by feel and angle. They don't need to see the MG42, they need a bearing and a distance. 0741. The first mortar round drops. The pop is soft compared to a rifle. The impact is not. Dirt and fragments lift along the far hedge line, about 20 yards short of the gun position. The second round lands closer. The MG42 fires again, shorter now, less confident. The crew knows what indirect fire means. Mortars are fast to adjust, and a machine gun is a fixed point once it commits to a firing slit. 0744. Dan hears shouting, faint, German. Then a barrel-length flash as the MG42 fires a longer burst, almost angry. It's either panic or a final attempt to keep the Americans down while the crew shifts position. 0746. Another mortar round lands nearly on top of the gun pit. The hedge line erupts. The MG42 stops. The silence is not relief. It is uncertainty. A stopped gun can restart. A crew can pull back and reappear from a new slit, a new angle, a new field. Dan waits, rifle pointed at the hedge, finger outside the trigger guard. 0748, the flank team appears, sudden movement at the far left. One soldier rises just enough to throw. A grenade arcs over the hedge and disappears. A second follows. A third. 0749. The blasts are muffled by earth and brush, but the effect is immediate. The hedge line belches dust. A helmet flips up and lands backward. No more firing comes from that slit. 0752. The lieutenant signals forward. The platoon climbs the bank in a staggered rush. Dan goes over, scanning for survivors, for a second weapon, for a hidden rifleman waiting to shoot from 10 yards away. The men approach the MG position carefully. They are no longer treating it like a distant sound. They are treating it like a living threat that can kill them up close. 0755. Dan sees the MG42. It lies on its bipod, angled toward the lane it dominated. The receiver is stamped steel, utilitarian. The barrel shroud is perforated for cooling. A belt of 7.92 millimeters still feeds into the tray. The weapon looks smaller than it sounded. 2 Germans are down near it, one in the pit, one partially behind the hedge. The assistant gunner's spare barrel case is open. Ammunition boxes are stacked. Their position was prepared, not improvised. They expected the Americans. They expected the Americans to move through that lane. 0703. Dan touches the MG42's barrel shroud with the back of his hand and jerks away. Even after minutes of silence, it's still hot. He looks at the gun again. This single weapon held a platoon in place, forced a flank, demanded mortar support, and cost lives in less than an hour. By June 10th, the company will have fought through 3 more hedgerow compartments like this. Each one will feel like a separate battle. The terrain will make every machine gun a fortress. The Germans will use MG teams like anchors, tying infantry positions together with fire. The Americans will learn to bring more automatic fire forward, to coordinate mortars faster, to use tanks with hedgerow cutters, to stop trying to win every problem with rifles alone. Dan's confidence in the Garand does not disappear. He still trusts it to fire when he pulls the trigger. What changes is his understanding of what a rifle can and cannot do against a crew-served gun built for control. 0711. The lieutenant points to a new hedgerow line ahead, another field, another compartment, another unknown angle. The platoon reforms. The men check ammo. The BAR gunner swaps magazines. The mortar team counts rounds. Dan loads a clip and listens for the sound that will decide whether he moves or stays pinned. In Normandy, that ripping sound becomes a clock. It tells them when they can breathe and when they can't.
At 0812, Company E pushes again. The platoon crosses another sunken track and pauses under a line of trees. The lieutenant no longer leads with optimism. He leads with math, angles, fields of fire, time under exposure. The MG42 has turned movement into a calculation. By June 13, 1944, the regiment is deep into the hedgerows south of Omaha. Progress is measured in hundreds of yards per day. Maps look clean. The ground is not. Every field boundary is a fighting line. German defenders use interlocking machine gun fire and short counterattacks to slow the advance. The Americans respond with artillery, mortars, tanks when available, and small unit drills that harden fast under casualty rates. At 11:38, June 15th, Dan watches a squad attempt a crossing without enough suppression. The MG42 opens from a concealed corner. The squad freezes. 2 men drop. The rest crawl back. The lesson repeats. The rifle is not obsolete, but it is not the center of gravity when a crew-served gun owns the ground. At 16:05, June 18th, Dan sees the Americans adapt. 2 BARs are paired on a hedge line to build a heavier base of fire.
A 30 caliber M1919A4 is dragged forward, belt-fed, tripod-capable, heavier and slower to move than the German gun, but capable of sustained fire when emplaced. A forward observer calls in artillery quicker, using practiced grids and short corrections. The platoon learns to blind suspected MG positions with smoke and fragmentation, then close with grenades and bayonets. It's ugly and efficient. Dan survives Normandy, not by heroics, by doing the fundamentals under stress. He keeps his rifle clean. He learns to reload without looking. He learns to fire fast, but not waste shots. The Garand's 8-round limitation becomes a discipline. The ping of an empty clip becomes a signal to move, not a panic. By September 1944, after replacements and reorganizations, Dan is promoted to corporal. He is no longer just a rifleman, he is a team leader. When his squad hits machine gun fire in the Hurtgen approach routes later that year, he does not order men to stand and trade shots. He puts them low. He identifies the gun's likely lane. He brings up the BAR and the grenades. He sends one pair wide. The MG42 is still terrifying, but it is no longer mysterious. After the war, in 1946, Dan uses the GI Bill to study mechanical engineering. He reads about weapons as systems, feed mechanisms, barrel life, metallurgy, recoil operation. He keeps thinking about the MG42, not as an enemy talisman, but as an engineered answer to a battlefield requirement. Sustained, mobile, high-volume fire from a weapon a small crew can carry. He is not the only one. Across the U.S. Army, the Normandy experience feeds arguments about squad and platoon firepower. The Garand proved the value of a reliable semi-automatic service rifle. But the Hedgerows proved something else. Automatic fire, sustained, controlled, crew-served, could dominate fights faster than individual marksmanship could solve them. In the post-war years, militaries look hard at what the Germans built. The MG42 concept, high rate, belt-fed, quick-change barrel, adaptable to bipod or tripod, becomes a model for the general-purpose machine gun idea. Nations refine it, some copy elements directly. The weapon's logic survives even when the politics do not. At 0920, May 1953, Dan, now a civilian consultant, stands on a stateside range watching Army ordnance personnel demonstrate belt-fed guns in the new post-war inventory. He recognizes the familiar priorities: controllable bursts, barrel management, crew drills, ammunition supply. He hears the same truth in different calibers. If a machine gun is placed well and fed well, it can make a rifleman feel small. Dan never stops respecting the Garand. It carried American infantry through the war with a rate of aimed fire no previous standard-issue rifle could match. But when he tells younger soldiers what Normandy taught him, he doesn't start with the rifle. He starts with the sound. He describes 0722 in a field outside Vierville-sur-Mer. He explains how quickly fear attaches itself to noise and how quickly training has to override it. He talks about suppressive fire, flanking movement, mortars, and the hard rule that open ground belongs to the machine gun until you take it away. Today, the MG42's descendants and design principles are still studied in museums, manuals, and range demonstrations. The weapon earned a reputation that outlived the men who carried it, not because it was invincible, but because it exposed a fact that infantry keep relearning. Firepower is not just what you carry. It is what you can sustain, coordinate, and place at the right moment. In Normandy, U.S. soldiers trusted their rifle. Then they heard the MG42, and the battlefield changed shape around that sound.